you said that you sent a message regarding setup. The meeting is already set up.
Yeah, I didn't know what was going on because normally when I
Good evening, everyone. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Are there any memorials? No, Trustee Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted us to remember and pray for Mr. Mark Naylor, the bus driver who died in a school bus crash on Highway 401 earlier this month, and offer condolences to his family. I also want to pray for all the KCI students from our coterminous board that were injured or impacted by the crash. I thought on a happier note, I'd like us to also acknowledge and welcome the new Bishop Joseph Dabrowski, who will be the new Bishop of the Diocese of Hamilton, just recently announced by Pope Leo XIV. We look forward to walking together in faith under his guidance, and we are grateful for Bishop Douglas Crosby, who's retiring after many years of faithful service. We offer our prayers as he begins this new chapter.
Thank you. Any other memorials? Okay, I'll turn it back over to you, Trustee Garrett.
You'll join me in the sign of our faith. In the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. A Remembrance Day prayer. God our Father, your Son Jesus gave up his life to free us from the power of sin and death. He showed us that the greatest love is in giving up one's life for others. Today and this week, we remember those who fought and died for our freedom. We ask you to bless and console them together with their families. Help us to understand the sacrifices they made in leaving their loved ones to face the horrors of war. May we never forget their generosity. May your Holy Spirit give us the courage to resist evil in all its forms and show us how to be peacemakers through prayer and action, lest we forget those who fought, suffered, and died, that we might have the freedom and peace we enjoy today. We ask you through Christ our Lord. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Thank you. Moving on to our territory acknowledgement. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather today is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. I also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. Moving to the approval of the agenda. Can I get a mover of the agenda? Trustee Cuff.
Sorry, I actually meant to ask, because the items for action, shouldn't they have included simply, the decisions or whatever from the pre-meeting to this one? Or no? That's for an agenda meeting, right? Sorry.
Okay, so then can I get a mover of the agenda? Trustee Cuff? Trustee Sakura? Okay, do we have consensus? Okay, thank you very much. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Is there any pecuniary interest from the current meeting or a previous meeting? Okay, seeing none. Moving now to the approval of the minutes, committee of the whole minutes from October 6th, sorry. Can I get a mover of that motion? Trustee Cuff? Trustee Sakura? Oh, Trustee Stanley?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a correction on the minutes for the previous committee of the whole. There was a sentence on 5.2 that said that Trustee Stanley noted a preference for excellence to be inserted, et cetera, et cetera. That was actually a comment I made about the MYSP update, not the pastoral plan update. So all we need to do is just shift that sentence up from 5.2 to 5.1, and that's all, and it's good to go.
Yeah, so under, just for Stephanie's benefit, we're going to move the sentence regarding the excellence from 5.2 up to 5.1. Okay. So with that amendment, the minutes with that amendment, Trustee Phillips and Trustee Sikora. Okay, do we have consensus? Okay, thank you very much. Moving now to item 5.1, the Equity Action Plan.
Good evening, everyone. This evening, I have our Senior Manager of Equity Services, Lynn Garriock, here, who's going to be bringing forward our Equity Action Plan for the next 5 years. So it is a strategy that has been put in place to help support equitable access to education of all of our students in our process of removing barriers to success. You'll see this evening our Senior Manager of Equity, Lynn Garriock, will be here to talk about the action plan and just our path moving forward as we rooted the action plan in the Catholic social teachings and the tenets of our school board. So Lynn, with that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody in the room and people listening online for the opportunity to talk about this action plan. It is 5 years, so this is very different from what we've done in the past. I would say it is an action plan that is a moral and spiritual commitment, one rooted. This happens all the time with me. It's not responding to my finger. I'm going to tap it every time. Okay. It is a moral and spiritual commitment, one rooted in human rights, Catholic social teachings, two-eyed seeing, and the enduring vision of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s beloved community. I'm not going to define everything, but what I would say is please spend some time reading the action plan. And if you do have questions about, for example, two-eyed seeing, I'm happy to answer those questions. This plan is about ensuring that every learner is valued, and it is about creating conditions where each student is not only welcome in our school board, but is empowered to succeed and reach one's full potential, spiritually, morally, intellectually, emotionally, socially, and artistically. At the heart of this plan lies the wisdom of Catholic social teachings, which I'm pretty sure I don't need to remind people of, but it is always nice to speak about them for a few minutes. The dignity of the human person. Every child is created in the image of God and deserves to be treated with respect and love. Our classrooms must fulfill and reflect this sacred truth. The common good, education must serve the flourishing of all, not just a few. Equity is not a luxury, it is a moral imperative. Solidarity. We are one human family. I will talk about differences between people, but we are still one human family. Our commitment to equity is a commitment to walk alongside one another, especially in times of struggle. Option for the poor and the vulnerable. We must prioritize the needs of students who have been historically and contemporarily marginalized, ensuring that they have the access to resources and opportunities so they can thrive. The rights and responsibilities. Every child has the right to a high quality education and the responsibility to contribute to this just and compassionate community. This action plan is a living expression of our faith. It is a gospel call to love our neighbor, to serve the vulnerable, and build a just society where all can flourish. This plan reflects our faith in action through listening, engaging, serving, reflecting, and transforming. It is guided by the principles of healing, inclusion, co-leadership, and it honors the wisdom of Indigenous communities through two-eyed seeing. Equity work is about healing and making sure that even though we do see divisions within our society, that we're working towards unity. Equity work is not easy, and people have different ways of fulfilling equity work. And so what that means for our school board is we keep listening and we keep communicating and we keep figuring out how we support all of our students. This plan invites us to unity. It centers listening, healing, and shared leadership. It fosters open dialogue and trying to build trust. And sometimes we slip, but we keep working on building trust. We try to address misconceptions. We try to address stereotypes. We try to address arguments that we have or disagreements that we have to create a supportive environment for all. Equity work seeks to dismantle barriers and promote understanding. It is a path towards reconciliation and collective growth. This means fostering relationships built on respect, empathy, and shared responsibility. When students feel seen and heard, they are more engaged and they're empowered to succeed. We embed equity in our policies, our classroom practices, our decision making, and it becomes part of our school culture as well as our board culture. From curriculum choices to hiring practices, equity guides our decisions and actions. Justice and love are at the heart of this vision, ensuring inclusion for all. We strive for systemic change that reflects both moral and spiritual commitments. Every member, every student, every staff member, every family member has a role in shaping a compassionate future. Engagement opportunities like forums, service learning projects invite active participation. So let me talk about the 5 pillars. Now, these 5 pillars aren't happening pillar 1, year 1, pillar 2, year 2, because I would hate to say that we're not serving until year 3. So these pillars work together and they interact with each other. But at the foundation is listening, which is a sacred action in Catholic education. It requires humility, openness, and a commitment to understanding the lived experiences of others. For students, this might mean creating safe spaces to share their stories. For families, this might include listening circles and community partnerships to foster meaningful dialogue. For staff, it might be understanding trauma-informed practices in the classroom and throughout the school. And for leaders to model systemic listening through audits, discernment, asking trustees, families, and I, of course, include trustees as leaders as well, but asking trustees, families, students about their experiences to shape a stronger community. Engagement means building authentic relationships and co-creating solutions. It moves beyond just consulting with people and actually engaging in collaboration. This might look like students engaging in equity projects that are relevant to their school. It's not being handed down by the board, but they see a problem within their school and want to be part of the co-creators to solve the problem. Families engage in advisory committees and cultural events to help support the different cultures within a school. Staff build equity-focused learning communities, and leaders allocate resources equitably and lead with transparency. Engagement reflects our call to communion, solidarity, and transforming awareness into action. Service reflects compassion, justice, humility. It is central to Catholic education and affirms the dignity of every person. Students might engage in service learning that address real world issues. Families receive wraparound supports and opportunities to contribute to our community. Staff participate in outreach and pastoral care, while leaders ensure inclusive policies and equitable resources that are distributed. Service embodies Christ's love and builds a compassionate school community. But we can't do this without reflecting. There are things that are going to go very well, and then there's things that don't go quite right. And so we have to reflect and do better next time. Reflection fosters growth, accountability, and spiritual discernment. It allows individuals and communities to examine their actions and progress towards an equity-led community. Students explore identity, obviously age-appropriate identity, as they're trying to figure out how they move through this world. They explore justice through guided reflection. Families share stories and engage in faith formation. Staff deepen their understanding of faith through inquiry and feedback. And leaders model curiosity, humility, and create reflective cultures. Reflection is a foundation of meaningful, transformative action. And the last pillar that I'll point to is transformation. Transformation renews minds, hearts, and institutions. It is both a spiritual and social imperative in Catholic education. Students become agents of change through leadership and inquiry. Families are empowered to co-create and lead initiatives to support the community. Staff reimagine practices through professional development, and leaders drive systemic change aligned with gospel values. Transformation requires bold vision, compassionate leadership, and unwavering commitment to the marginalized. So normally in an action plan, you might have indicators, and you would have indicators to then monitor. But in fact, our action plan falls under the multi-year strategic plan. We are creating those indicators over the next few months, and we will make sure that we are accountable with this action plan through the indicators. But ultimately, what we want to be tracking is student academic success, belonging, and well-being measures. This means every action is tied to a measurable outcome so stakeholders can see tangible results. I would say the framework promotes transparency and measurable progress aligned with equity and spiritual values. We support ongoing evaluation and improvement to foster trust and better outcomes for the community. If we have to take a step backwards, we take a step backwards to improve. It means ongoing monitoring, both formally and informally. We invite students to give us feedback, staff to give us feedback, leaders to give us feedback, and we maintain a commitment to thrive in this school board. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there questions from trustees? Trustee Stanley.
You mentioned at the beginning that this is a new 5-year plan, and that's a new thing for our board. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the rationale for making a 5-year plan and how that differs from what we might have done in the past?
Sure. To be honest, we were originally thinking a 3-year plan, which was like the last one. But then we had an outside consultant who suggested the MYSP should be a 4 or 5-year plan. And so we pivoted. And when I say we, I mean the senior team pivoted to make it a 5-year plan. And as you can imagine, there's probably some gains to having a longer plan. It doesn't feel like we're pivoting every 2 years or 3 years. So that's probably a benefit. And there's probably a drawback, but I think because trustees had decided that the MYSP was going to be 5 years, it seemed appropriate to make this one 5 years. I do want to mention though, and I didn't mention this at the beginning, but it's tied to this. We were tying the equity plan very closely to the pastoral plan. And so you'll notice that the first 3 pillars are the same.
Thank you for your presentation. It was really nice to see your presentation including a lot more faith-based approaches. That was beautiful. So thank you for that. So I had a couple of questions for you. So is there any evidence or facts that you can provide or demonstrate that your equity initiatives are raising our EQAO scores? And my second question is, how are you including our Catholic values in your approach to equity?
Okay, I'm going to answer the second one first, and then I am going to answer your first one and possibly hand it off as well. So your second question is, how do I ensure that the equity values align with?
So I'll just clarify. So how are your equity initiatives going through a Catholic lens? How are you including the Catholic faith in your approach to demonstrate equity? And the reason why I ask this is because there has been approaches in the past that have not worked, that may have kind of made the situation worse. I'll give you an example. So I had a teacher, which I will remain anonymous because I don't want to disclose the name, but they had mentioned that they had an equity officer come into the classroom, an equity representative come and talk about white privilege and this. They were educating what the N-word was, for example, which I'm not going to say, obviously. And then the teacher had complained that, that word was never used until it was mentioned that day. And then it became an issue. So what I worry about is, are we teaching racism? And is there a way that we can include Catholic faith? Because Catholic faith teaches us to accept everyone. Everyone's loved, no matter what. We're brothers and sisters. Forgiveness, do not judge. And I'm just wondering, how are you incorporating that type of faith into the equity initiative? Because equity is very much part of the Bible. And I'm just wondering how that is included. And also, does it include everyone? Because I know that we talk about specific groups, but are we talking about everyone? Even white students, for example, because we do, there's white students as well who experience economical challenges, and we need to focus without labeling. I just want to remove all the labels, and I want to focus on the people who are in need. And I don't care what color they are, what gender they are, what race. Everybody deserves a high quality education, and that I agree with you on.
So thank you so much for your question. And I'm going to approach it 2 different ways. I would love to find out a little more about an equity person coming into a classroom. We get invited by teachers in the classroom. So that is a little bit Shocking that a teacher would turn and say, I'm shocked what happened, because normally if somebody gets invited into the classroom to have an equity talk, it's because something actually happened, including your example was the use of the N word. We don't proactively go into classrooms and talk about the N word. So I just want to clarify that. But that wasn't your main point. Your main point was that if we talk about race, if we talk about sexism, if we talk about areas of inequality, we might be indeed promoting it. And I would offer that sexism exists, racism exists, classism exists. Just because we don't actually say it out loud doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I think we have to be cautious about what conversations we have with young ones. And I do think you're not having an N-word conversation with 6-year-olds. We might indeed be introducing a term to 6-year-olds. But I think when you're talking about students who are in grade 8 or grade 12 or grade 11 who are hearing language or witnessing racism or sexism or classism, it's time to address it and use the terms and be specific. I would love to say there is no racism, there is no sexism, there is no classism, and all of the phobias and isms that are out there. That is not the world we live in. Do I think the world we live in is significantly better when it comes to racism, classism, homophobia, transphobia, and all of those things from when I was in school? Yes. Why? Because schools are hitting it head on and trying to deal with it. So I do think this world is getting better. I think it would be a mistake not to talk about it ever in school. I hope that, and I can see from your face, you're not quite agreeing with me, but that's the perspective that we need to talk about it and respond to what is actually happening in our schools.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you, just so you know. I guess I'm still wondering what our Catholic approach is to equity. That's the lingering question here, because I think if you look at Catholic scripture, it talks about accepting everyone, loving everyone. We're brothers and sisters. And I'm just wondering what your approach is with that. Are we including scriptures and posters and events? Because I think that's really important, especially with our identity as a Catholic school board.
So I love that. And you just gave us a great suggestion. I don't think in the posters that have come out of Equity Services, we've necessarily included scripture. So you've just given us a great idea. What I will say is this summer, we created a set of posters that have scripture in it. On equity issues that were sent to principals. So this will be the first year where you will start seeing posters in schools that actually have scripture on it. But love that idea. I will also say that we always talk about the Catholic social teachings. We don't sort of ignore them. And so we use the language, whether people hear us or not is something different, but we definitely use the language and we take it seriously. We're not just saying it to sound Catholic or to sound like that it's superficial. We actually say it because we believe it. So I feel like we tie it. Could we do it even more? Has it evolved over years? The answer is yes and yes.
Are there any other questions from trustees? Trustee Doherty Masters.
Thank you, Lynn, for your presentation. I really liked reading about the accountability framework because it gave a little sneak peek about what it might look like at different levels. And a lot of the initiatives seem to be geared toward older students, you know, students that are intermediate or senior grades. And I'm just wondering what it might look like, or if you can give me a sense or give us a sense of what it would look like in the primary and early years levels, just because it's going to be, they're not going to be organizing activities and so on, but they might participate in a different way. So I just wondered if you could give us a sneak peek about what it looked like with our youngest learners.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. I have thoroughly liked the questions, and I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation. One of the things that we always worry about when we are talking about the younger students is when do we introduce concepts that might be a little bit adult? And so we can always talk about loving each other, loving the neighbor. We want to do that as quickly as possible. We want to have young students engage in service learning projects. The one thing that I think we do really well is to let schools drive what they want to do rather than have the board say, okay, every school is going to do A, B, and C. Really, if you're doing really good equity work, you're responding to the community that's in front of you. And so, can I imagine some of the things that our elementary students can do? They can help with food drives. They can help with Christmas drives. Again, I think it's going to depend on the school community. I'll give you a concrete example that one of our schools did this year that I'm so pleased about, and it has to do with social economic status. After Halloween, they actually had a costume drive where they were giving costumes to people who can't afford it. So they have a costume for next year instead of what many people have done, which is you wear your costume once and it either goes in the closet or it gets thrown out, right? And so they collected the costumes and then shared it with families that are having trouble paying for costumes. So I see activities like that and having discussions with kids about how we share, how we help people who may not have as much. I'm going to also answer your question in a slightly different way. I think all our secondary schools are required to have a GSA, right? That comes from the ministry. Many of our elementary schools do not have a GSA, but they could have a GSA. I think it would be wrong for the board to say, elementary schools, we're having a GSA, so Gay Straight Alliance in elementary, without the school community deciding that's what they want. And so when students or parents say, we think we need this affinity group or we need a GSA, then we would create it in elementary. But we wouldn't go out of our way to create it, just in part because we want the community to feel comfortable with it so that the GSA will thrive. Does that make sense? Okay.
Are there any other questions from trustees? Trustee Weiler.
Thank you, Lynn, for the presentation. And I can certainly see the sort of new MYSP and certainly the language in the pastoral plan threaded throughout the equity plan. So I really like when our plans are so integrated and focused on our faith values. So thank you for making that so present. I also, like Trustee Doherty Masters, enjoyed seeing the accountability measures and the framework because I'm really excited to see that as this action sort of moves to action in the classroom, really seeing whether we can continue to influence the belonging and well-being of our students, which you referenced, and is an area that when we report on it as a board, we know that we need to do more work in that area. So thank you for that. My question is around the equity plans were designed in the schools a few years ago, certainly starting with some of the ministry requirements. Can you help me understand what the ministry asks boards for today related to the equity plans?
So I love this because the ministry has a lot to say on equity, which is fantastic. And so a concrete example would be that all school boards in Ontario have to do anti-racism training this year. And it is for all staff, not just teachers or not just for principals. And so the ministry will tell us really in a very concrete way about what their expectation is and the conversations that we are having, at least for staff, right? Professional development. I would say when it comes to how we interact with our students, they are a little bit further removed, other than expecting that we uphold equity principles. And those are outlined in the ministry, and it's very, very clear. They don't tell us how to do it, which I think is really important. Again, equity work and good equity work is about knowing the community and then doing what works for your particular community. So the ministry says here are equity principles that we expect that are occurring in school boards, but they won't tell us how to do it. And that's really the senior team's job, and then principals' jobs, and then teachers' jobs, et cetera, to really see how it's realized in schools. We have an easier job because we are a Catholic institution. So how it's realized is shaped by the Catholic social teachings. I hope I answered your question. And I realized that I didn't answer your first question. Do you mind if I go back to it? Okay, so really quickly, and I may hand this off to both Jenny and Paul, so heads up that I might hand this off to both of you. But when we are thinking about standardized testing, 1 year's data is not going to help us. And so or 2 years data is not going to sort of help us understand whether what we are doing in equity has a direct line with our scores. So where I think we're at, and I think research has done a phenomenal job, and I think Gerald can also jump in here, we have seen disproportionality in some of our indicators. And that's giving us a clue that there are certain groups that we may have to do something different with or attend to in a way that is specialized. We're at the beginning of that work. And so it would be really, well, it would be irresponsible for me to say, oh, we have data to share with you that shows that the equity work that has happened is making a difference. We haven't done that work, but that is the work that's the journey we are on. That's why last spring you saw all of that data, a bit overwhelming. And we talked about disproportionality, and we talked about which groups maybe weren't as successful. And now we have to figure out, well, why? And what is our next step? Jenny, Paul, Gerald, I would love if you could step in. This is more their work.
Through you, Madam Chair, I can just pop in with one example from Indigenous education when we're looking at the data collections and stitching it with the student census data. So one result of that work being done is identifying our Indigenous population through scores and stitched with the census data that our Indigenous students in grade 6 are not performing as well on EQAO.
So how do we help accommodate that is we've hired a person, Indigenous person who will be working in the classrooms with students on math that are Indigenous and as well as the other students in small groups. So we're not isolating that student in the classroom, like honing in on them and extracting them. We're engaging the work with another math student success teacher in the classrooms. So that's just one example of what Lynn's kind of focusing on.
You, Madam Chair. I would add to that the link between the work that we've done and not necessarily connected to EQAO, but through our student census data that we've done in 2021 and the one we did last spring, and the intersectionality between what those findings told us about, as Lynn referred to, disproportionalities in student outcomes and why that's happening, and the work that we do in equity to support our students and our families on the margins through this analysis of data and through community consultations, and I can speak to that a little bit more after, is going to help us get at those achievement gaps for students who are traditionally marginalized in our marginalized communities and in our schools. The work that the student census data does, it informs what Lynn and the work that we do as a board in equity, because it addresses those disproportionalities and it addresses the issues that students and families are faced with as barriers towards success in standardized testing, which is what Trustee Phillips, you referred to earlier in EQAO. That census and that data that we retrieve, in addition to those consultations that we have started to have with our community, brings two people together, the board and families and community, to come up with solutions to those types of issues. So the work that we do in equity is a way of promoting the solutions that we need to find in consultation with our community members to improve student learning and student achievement. And so I see a direct link between the equity work, the census data that we've collected, not only in 2021, but the most recent one we did in 2025, stitching all of that data together, and then in consultation with community, supporting the work that we do here to have better outcomes for students, specifically those on the margins, if that makes sense.
One last thing that I didn't address, you said explicitly, and I'm glad that you did, what about white students? Equity Services spends a lot of time thinking about students and social economic status, regardless of race, regardless of religious background, etc. So we actually do spend a lot of time thinking about students that may not have all of the resources to help them be successful. And yeah, and it's not just Black students or Indigenous students.
Just to follow up. So I remember you mentioned that you consult with teachers and students. Is there any type of parental involvement in regards to a prescriptive approach to community needs? And the only thing I'm against is the whole labeling of groups and so forth, because I really believe that every group, it doesn't matter who it is, it doesn't matter gender, race, it doesn't matter what you identify as, there is a need. So I don't agree with just focusing on specific groups, but just focusing on who needs help, right? So I'm wondering what parental involvement is involved, because I don't want to say any names because just to keep the privacy of parents, but in one of my committees, I had a parent state that they kind of don't like the extra attention they're getting in regards to equity and all these things. They just want their kid to have a high quality education and not be put in the spotlight for being of color or race or anything. They don't want to stand out. They just want to kind of go with the system. So I'm just wondering what type of parental involvement is involved with that, because I definitely think it's important to respect the privacy of parents and students.
So we do have some specific advisory committees that come out of equities. You have other parent groups, have nothing to do with equity services per se, but we do have advisory groups. We have two that were recommended by the ministry. One is a Two-Spirit LGBTQIA plus advisory group. Again, ministry recommended, not ordered, but strongly recommended. And the second one was a Black advisory group. For two different reasons, frankly. So when it's the Black advisory group, it's in part because Black students across Ontario have lower graduation rates than their other racial counterparts. So that's one reason. They have higher suspension rates, another reason. This is generalized data across Ontario. And so how do we deal with that? How are we making sure that our Black students are reaching their full potential? We ask parents of Black children to contribute. And most of the parents are Black, but not all, to contribute to that conversation. With the Two-Spirit LGBTQIA plus parents, we have an advisory group in part because we know the suicide rate and suicide ideation is much higher in students that identify as part of those communities. It would be shocking and a shame if we just ignore that fact. And it is a fact. It is higher in the Two-Spirit LGBTQIA plus communities. We also know that the hate crime in Waterloo region and then across Canada isn't higher in the Two-Spirit LGBTQIA plus communities, but it tends to be more violent than any other communities. So when we're talking about a hate crime being committed against a trans individual, they're normally in the hospital or dead. That is not true for other communities. Again, I think it would be a shame if we just ignored that fact and just pretended that wasn't happening in our society. Mhm.
My last comment is that in society, I find that in today's society, Christians are probably at the top of the list as highly persecuted people. You know, with churches being burned down and being persecuted for their beliefs and their thoughts. You know, there's other faiths that are not touched, but for Christian beliefs, it's a very touchy subject. I mean, we had somebody like Charlie Kirk who was just shot dead for his beliefs. So the death is happening all the way around. And I just think it's important to recognize and also protect the faith of faithful Christians in our system and protecting everyone, you know, including them under the umbrella because they're highly persecuted as well. And I think that, you know, no, obviously nobody, you know, deserves death or suicide or anything like that, but it's very important to include them because it's very difficult for them. I think it's important to include parents with Christian values to get their opinion as well, not just LGBTQ, not just Indigenous, because we all are together in this and we need to put our opinion as one and make sure that we're all included because a lot of parents that have come to me feel that they feel excluded because they are Christian, and which is a huge orthodox because it doesn't make sense. We're a Catholic school board, and we need to find a way to include Christians because we are a Catholic school board, or else we're going to just lead to an amalgamation of just one public board, because that's the way we're leading if we don't do that.
So I don't disagree with you about Christian. I am going to disagree with you about the statistics. Jewish people in Canada have the most hate crimes across Canada than any other religious group. Muslims come second. So that doesn't mean ignore that there is hate towards Christians. I'm just saying, let's just be a little accurate about who is getting persecuted the most. And it's Jews first, then Muslims across Canada and also in this region. I hear you. You're saying, let's have a broader conversation, include more voices. That's what I think this action plan is also asking for as well. So I hear you. I'm listening. I think the senior team is listening, but I do think it is important that we do speak accurately. And I apologize that I am correcting when you say Christians are the most persecuted.
Just to correct you, I didn't say the most. I said it's one of the top. So it's not a competition for me.
Okay.
You know, I don't care who's the top, who's the bottom. I don't agree with any of it.
Yes.
I just want to make that
We're all
clear.
on the same page.
You
then.
know, we're all flesh and bone, and we all have we all are made from God, and we need to respect that.
Thank you, and I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Lynn. Moving now to the Math Action Achievement Plan. Through you, Madam Chair. You are probably looking for my math sidekick, Petra Leduc. Unfortunately, she is the expert in this department and is not here right now. She is ill, unfortunately. So I told her I would do my very best to give the first Math Achievement Action Plan update. You will have read the board report, very thorough, lots of data in there and information on the November and or the July and November reports. So this is the first of 3 that you will get this year, same as last year, as is mandated for us by the ministry. Okay, which screen? There we go. I'm working from 2 computers here, unfortunately, today. So the alignment to the MYSP for 2025 to 2028, we have our new pillars there, learning, serving, and belonging. So we've identified the areas of success for our students and our school community. We have here listed our 6 priority schools from 2024-25, and that report would have been input in July to the ministry. That's the due date for that. And we have 2025-26, our updated priority schools. The changes that St. Bernadette has replaced St. Clement's. So as we look at our 3 priority areas in for the plan, we have our curriculum fidelity, educator math content knowledge, and knowing the learner and responding. So these are the actions that are given to us by the ministry, and we are really good in this board of identifying and focusing on those. Areas of need in grade 3 and 6, spatial sense. Grade 6 is data. And then the thinking category, math learning through the math processes and the social emotional learning. Measurable results in the far column. Our board has many opportunities for measurable results. Just a few, we have our pre-post assessments that are done in K to 8, our EQAO, mock EQAO, and our many AQ courses for teachers. We're very successful here at this board in fulfilling the amounts that we get from the ministry funds. We always meet that, which is really terrific because our
it's a win-win because Patriot teaches them. So we're using our board approved resources as well. So it's a win-win situation. For ensuring the fidelity of the curriculum implementation, we have a big push here on driving home the expectations of using the curriculum document. That is a huge priority for us. That we must be using the board approved resources. We are seeing some of that not happening, and we're really trying to identify where and how we can better support that. We've spoken openly with the administrators on that work, the need for the awareness and being used in classroom. We've built up StaffNet, which is our, I guess, our housing of our curriculum areas. We've really built it up in math and literacy and many other areas as well for the resources and supports that staff can get into, working with NTIP really closely to catch those new teachers for board resources and ensuring that they have the content knowledge for those specific curriculum areas. And then our grade 1 to 8 long range plans and pacing guides. We've brought our administrators into this work. And one exciting thing that I've learned in my last, we're doing school visits right now, superintendents. So I was in schools today, and on Thursday, they actually developed their own look fors using our pacing guides and long range plans. So they really liked it. They wanted to be accountable going into the classrooms, using these guides saying, where are you? Because it's November, you should be here in the pacing guide. So that's a real celebration for us that our administrators are feeling more comfortable and confident to get in and ask where you are in the math because they have those look fors using the pacing guide so they know exactly where their teacher should be. So it brings a little bit more accountability to our educators to say, oh, my administrator knows where I should be and what I should be covering in order to get through the curriculum, all the expectations by the end of the year. So we're really excited for that. So it's kind of a sneak peek I was going to share with SOs tomorrow. So here you go. It's very exciting. The second area is engaging our ongoing learning on mathematics and content knowledge for teaching. So again, we want to really prioritize our data collection through our board math lead and our coaches. Our math lead teacher work is really exciting this year that we are able to do focused areas of work. We have 60 staff registered and showing up, which is really exciting. It's after school, so that shows the level of motivation that they have. We are motivating them a little bit with math resources, books, manipulatives, and takeaways for their classrooms. And board approved schools this year. So priority schools from the ministry, we've identified board schools that we recognize are not priority from the ministry, but we see them as being an additional piece needing support. So we've chosen one of our coaches to solely focus, and we're doing our teaching sprints. They're in for 2 weeks. They leave after 2 weeks, hopefully having built some capacity, and we leave some content specific work for those teachers to continue off the work that's been done. And we're really hoping to get, that's kind of a side-by-side PD model that we know is very successful. And then we had some funding this year that went to locally to supporting local initiatives, and Knowledge Hook is one of them. So we were able to contact them and have them come in and do some PD. So all of our schools received PD. It was in a lunch and learn model because we don't have release quite yet, but all of our schools have received that PD from Knowledge Hook, which is around our pre and post math assessments, which is pretty exciting that we had that paid for by them. And then finally, knowing the mathematics learner, probably the biggest one, to be honest. If we don't know our learners, then how do we know what to apply to the work that they need to be doing? And basically, it just comes down to good pedagogy, building capacity with data and our educators to understand the connection between report card marks and EQAO marks. Like, are they consistent? Are we being, are they valid assessments that we're using? Or are they a bit skewed and off? So we're doing a little bit of work around that to make sure that our educators know their learners and are assessing them well and accurately. our mock EQAO, so the e-assessment to mimic EQAO, those results from that go right back to the educator with the next steps. So are they following the long range plans, the pacing guides? If so, they should have covered the content on mock EQAO and EQAO. And the grade K to 8 entry and exit assessments. This gives them a baseline. When they do that in September, October, they have then follow the pacing guides and the long range plans to get them to May when they will do the second assessment that will give them hopefully some growth and understanding of their students. I will say, again, we worked with our administrators very heavily to bring them into this, to value it. And last year was our first year doing it across the board, and we had 39% of our students across the population complete it. And this year for our entry assessment, we had 76%. So that's a pretty impressive growth, almost double. So we're pretty excited by that. And then reporting for 2025-26, just some of the areas we're looking at, of course, that are is the attendance at or above 90%. Yes, I agree on their attitudes and confidence in math. And looking at our IEPs, students on IEPs receiving modification in math, not accommodations, but specifically modifications. And then one more here, changes in reporting. I think that if we look at all these questions that are being posed by the ministry on the screen here, I don't need to read through them, but when I go through all of them, I really do believe that we are doing so much good work. I want you to please know this. We are able to positively respond to every one of these questions. It's pretty impressive work that we're pretty proud of. And we have had the ministry reach out. They actually are coming for a visit. They want to go to our priority schools and have a walk around. They want to see the work that we're doing because all of these reports they read. So it's pretty easy for them to see the work that's going on in different boards. So they want to come and see how we're running it. They want to look at how we're collecting our data. We're really hoping to keep them and have them to plan it to come to one of our math lead learning nights. So when we have our MLTs here, we want them to also see that work because again, to have 60, like one from every school show up and do the work and take it back it's pretty good work. So we're pretty excited by that. So, and obviously the ministry is too. So we're pretty proud of that. And then finally, just what our board-wide spread. So just kind of a quick synopsis. I spoke to most of it, but this is the work that we're doing. Maybe the SO map visits is the only one that I didn't speak on, but everything else, yeah, it's great work. We're excited and lots ahead of us and lots more learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from trustees? Trustee Phillips?
I just wanted to thank you for your presentation. I think math is so important. It's one of the foundational things that every child needs in their education. Now, I know that there's certain schools that are a main focus that maybe I'm assuming that you are judging it based on grades where they need more assistance. But for schools that are struggling, that don't quite meet that par, is there anything that the board is doing to support those students from schools that maybe don't have a low enough score, but they have students who are struggling? And is there any room for improvement for more staffing or more supports in regards to funding or staff that you require to make this more successful?
Yes and yes. We would love more staff. I did pull our math consultant from the role and put him in the classroom in order to accommodate the sprints. Because we have the priority schools are selected by the ministry based on EQAO scores. So when we say that we don't want to put all our eggs in the basket of EQAO, it's like, well, that's where the funding comes from. And I realize it is one measure. It's not the be all and end all, but it is what predicts us getting funds from the government in order to get coaching staff. The board does chip in on that as well. But the reason we wanted to, my concern too was we're hitting these priority schools. What about some of the other learners? And that's where the sprints came in. So we have one staff dedicated to doing schools that we've identified in the board that are not priority identified by the minister, but we're identifying them as getting in need of support. They have enough students we're learning that need more support. So she's going into those schools this year. So that is kind of how we're doing that. The other angle is our math lead teachers. So they're coming in to do their sessions with Petra here, and then they're taking that back in, that good work back in, and they're getting a little bit of time on the staff meetings and their divisional meetings, so they can take that back. We're giving them resources, we're giving them books, we're giving them the things that the kids need to have. So those are kind of how we're trying to meet that need.
Just to follow up, if that's all right, I would definitely love to hear more feedback going forward in regards to some of the needs that are required. Because one of the things that one of the math leads said to us in a previous meeting was that math is kind of like a string of Christmas lights. If one of them don't work, then going forward, the other ones don't work. And I think that's kind of it's very relevant to the situation. You know, if a student falls behind in one lesson, they might not get the future lessons because math is kind of interlinked. So I would definitely love to hear more feedback in regards to that in any way that the board can assist with that. Even if it means, you know, coming from reserve funds or whatever that may be, any way we can advocate through OECTA or whatever that may be. You know, I would love to hear more from that.
I'm taking notes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know Petra's not here, so I thought I better take some notes. Thank you.
Decorah.
Thank you for the presentation. Just, I guess, first of all, a quick question on the priority school. Are they selected just on the grade 3 or the grade 6, or is it a combination of the both?
Combination of both. Yeah, because you'll notice that some, we have grade 3 in some schools, we have 3 and 6 in some schools, and straight 6 in others.
Okay. And I guess, you know, the other thing is that, for example, St. Clement's was dropped and St. Bernadette. I guess there's that particular cohort of students from St. Clement's, for example, they may become priority again in 2 years' time.
Yes.
Are we doing anything to try to hit the gap between?
Yes. Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you. And that was a very unusual low score that we had. We're still unclear on how St. Clement's landed with that percentage that year. We have looked into it. We're just not sure. But to answer your question, yes, we do have sprint work going on there. So in order to keep that momentum going, we have our math coach that's doing just the sprints. We've identified that as a need. So she's been out there already this year. Yep, to do that work still. Thanks.
This from trustees. Trustee Weiler.
Thank you very much for the presentation. You did a great job.
Let Petra know, okay?
Yeah. Just a quick question. I know that the secondary schools haven't kind of met the criteria for any of the priority schools. And I was curious about the sort of pre-course to the grade 9 sort of de-streamed class. And one of the things I was interested in was whether sort of all the schools have implemented that de-streamed sort of the pre-course. And the reason why I ask is because we know that students coming from elementary come with a lot of different experiences. And I was under the impression, I think, that all schools were offering it, but I don't think all did. So I was curious on the criteria by which a school would offer that sort of pre-course before de-streamed. And I'm focusing on it because I think after students sort of enter grade 9, that grade 9 experience is so pivotal on their sort of opportunity to want to, or I guess their interest in continuing off the math journey, like whether, I know they have to do 9 and 10, but sort of kind of continuing on. So I was I guess I was concerned a little bit that not everyone, not all the schools were getting that sort of level set opportunity when they came in. And I just was curious to the criteria for it.
Through you, Madam Chair, I can respond to that question. So that was the GLS 10M course. That was a learning strategy course that included some kind of bit of some gap closing opportunities for students going into grade 9 before they went into the D stream course in semester 2. And so the criteria was based on transition meetings and conversations with families to see if it was something that would be a benefit. And then it comes down to course selection. So of course, if we have enough students that select that course, we can run it. Up until last year, we had 4 out of the 5 high schools that were running the course, and it's this year that it's the first year, I believe, for St. David's, and is up and running for the GLS 1OS. So all 5 high schools now offer it. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on to the multi-language learner.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to invite up our student achievement consultant for multilingual learners, Barb McCourt, who will walk us through our update on our multilingual learners at Waterloo Catholic.
There we go. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to share updates about how we're supporting our multilingual learners here at Waterloo Catholic. So Waterloo Catholic has incredible diversity of our students. Our students have been born in 147 different countries, and you can see the list of top 10 countries here after Canada. The linguistic diversity of our multilingual learners and our families is also equally striking. You can see our top 10 list here after English, and our students speak over 106 languages. And I share these top 10 lists with you to help us remind us that we need to recognize and honor the unique backgrounds and diverse experiences of our families and respond to those through culturally responsive practices. And our Newcomer Reception Center is a vital first step for our families. We have welcomed over 100 families so far this year through assessment process. Last year, we completed 526 assessments, which is down from the previous year, which was 649 assessments. So the newcomer assessment process is really important for families to be able to learn more about the Ontario school system, as well as get connected to community resources quickly. Our Newcomer Reception Center team has worked closely with Waterloo Catholic math team to revise and update our elementary math assessments, which we're really proud of. They are aligned with our curriculum. And we also did some partnering with Knowledge Hook, so that once that's fully online, we'll be quite excited about that. We are still partnering and working with our secondary math assessments to revise them again, and that is important for accurate course placement for our secondary students. Working also out of the Newcomer Reception Center is our administrative assistant for newcomer registration services. And this service is our reception center administrative assistant works with our newcomer families here on work and study permits. And she walks them through the registration process, as well as continuing to update and track work and study permit expiry dates, which helps us to just stay aligned and in compliance with our Ontario student records regulations. In our elementary panel, we have 16 amazing multilingual support teachers, or MLSTs, and they provide direct support for 425 of our elementary students who are in the earliest steps to English acquisition. And so that math is roughly 27 students on each MLST's caseload. In addition to providing those direct supports, they also provide monitor supports for our students who have a little bit more English proficiency, but are still developing their English proficiency. And we have 701 of those students on that monitor caseload. In addition to providing direct support and monitor support for our students, our amazing MLSTs also provide supports for classroom teachers. And they share practices that support multilingual learners, but are good for all students through collaborative and co-teaching lessons in social studies, science, history, and geography. And I'm extremely proud to let you know that as of today, we have completed 152 lessons in our elementary classrooms so far since September. At the end of every collaborative co-teaching lesson, we invite our classroom teachers to take an anonymous survey. This survey is anonymous so that folks can give their honest reflection about this process. And I'll let you read these quotes that I've pulled. We are thrilled with this feedback from educators. But we're even more thrilled to see that the work that we have shared within our collaborative and co-teaching lessons, we're thrilled to see that students and teachers are implementing the things that we've shared, the strategies that we've shared, without our ML teachers taking the lead or starting the initiative. So we're very pleased with this progress that's happening out in the system. In our secondary panel, we have 28 secondary ML monitors and ESL or ELD teachers supporting students in ESL and ELD programs. And I'll just take a minute to refresh your memory. ESL is for students with who have had age-appropriate schooling in their home country. So they're here adding English to their repertoire of skills. And the English Literacy Development Program is for our students who have limited prior schooling. And as such, they have significant gaps in their education and so require that additional accelerated programming. So we currently have 514 students in semester one, according to our Aspen data, enrolled in ESL and ELD classes across our 5 high schools. We also have an additional 171 students who recently exited ESL programming, but are still receiving ML monitor support on the monitor caseload. And that is to ensure that they get that ongoing academic support they may need throughout the rest of their classes. Our supports for the ELD program go beyond language acquisition, and we are using tools like Lexia Power Up as well as Reading Coach to help facilitate that foundational skill of literacy that our students will need. We also embed numeracy development skills in our Learning Strategies course or GLS course that's specifically for multilingual learners. And with these targeted accelerated supports, we are hoping and helping our students to achieve that foundational literacy and numeracy skills in order to add to their academic success as they go through the program. Another really important goal for us is to ensure that we are providing equitable access to open two-way communication between schools and families. And we know that interpretation services provide that opportunity for families to have confidentiality as well as respect for the dignity of families. So not all of our families that are newcomer families need interpreter supports, but for those that do, it is really important that we offer that. And we know that open communication, two-way communication between home and school will help to foster that feeling of parent engagement and parent connectedness. And this, we know, will have a positive impact on student achievement outcomes. We can't do the work that we do on our ML teams without our YMCA school settlement partners. So our settlement workers in schools, we have 6 full-time Swiss workers who are dedicated to Waterloo Catholic Schools, supporting our 14 of our elementary schools and 4 of our secondary schools. We also have access to itinerant Swiss supports across the rest of the schools where families have settlement needs. Our settlement partners provide a host of supports for our families, including help to register for school. They offer support with programs like School Cash Online and completing school paperwork. They help families to understand and navigate the Ontario school system and to learn more about report cards. They offer programming in the communities for families and youth, and they offer supports to connect families with community services. So we partner annually to provide the NOW program with our YMCA settlement partners, and we offer that at St. David's, St. Mary's, and Resurrection for students that are our newcomer students who are transitioning to secondary school for the first time. All of this connection with our settlement workers helps to build that community between families and schools and our newcomer families to help build trust and build a sense of connection to our school community. So it's very important. And again, this is an overarching overview of the work that we do here to support our multilingual learners. But I know that our team is so dedicated, they're so amazing, and they do their best every day. Whenever a newcomer student walks through our doors, they do their best to make sure that that student knows that they are welcome and that they belong here at Waterloo Catholic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from trustees? Trustee Phillips.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I just wanted to say, I think it's amazing what you're doing. Coming from a family of immigrants, my parents came to this country from Portugal and Brazil, and they didn't have these types of supports, and they really struggled. It was very difficult for them, and it really it warms my heart to know that there's this type of supports. And it also made me reflect as well. I'm wondering, I know that some of even the trustees and some of the members on our board speak different languages. And I'm wondering if it's worth us having that listed on the website, that we speak multi-languages to support more families. You know what I mean? Because, you know, there's obviously there's ChatGPT and all these other things, but to have somebody who can actually communicate in your language, I think that's really important, and to have that support, because a lot of these people are coming to our country for new opportunities and for success, and they want their children to succeed. And I think that's so important, you know, and I think it's wonderful what you're doing to give that opportunity to not only parents and but students.
Thank you.
Any other questions from trustees? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move into our linkages and pastoral activity, and so we will bid good evening to the superintendents. If I could ask the chairs of those two committees, do you think 10 minutes is sufficient, or should we do 15? 10 is okay? Okay.